back to another episode of Build the Culture with myself, Seth Harrison, and my partner, Thomas Hardy. And today we have a special guest, Stefanie. Stefanie, I've learned not to say last names because I will butcher them.
That's fair.
This is two episodes ago.
Fair. It's fair.
I could take that over.
I'm no longer doing that. So Stefanie, if you would please, give us, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and I'll let you have the reins.
Cool. Well, I'll fill in the last name then. Stefanie Reichman. I'm super excited to be here. I think culture is obviously a huge part of the industry, so I think it's really awesome that you guys just dive into that. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from New York City. Did my schooling out there. Don't hold it against me. But I appreciate that. I studied civil engineering for my undergrad. As I was kind of wrapping up that degree, I realized I did not want to be a civil engineer. I studied structures and it sounded really cool at the beginning, but as I was graduating, I was left a little bit confused on what to do next. So I did the next logical thing and moved to Wisconsin for a master's degree, which polar opposite of what life in New York is like, but it was a really cool experience. Just a bit. I think it was a culture shock that I really wanted. And I really went into it with the mindset of like, you can survive anything for 2 years. So I got my master's in construction management. Worked as a APM, an assistant project manager, for about a year until I got an opportunity to actually move out west to Las Vegas, where I'm currently at, working for a general contractor. I started their virtual design and construction department, which I was pretty young at the time, and an opportunity like that was a little too good to pass up. Worked there for a few years, and now for the past little over 2.5 years, I've been working at Bluebeam. So made a bit of a pivot there between construction to construction tech, working as a customer success manager at Bluebeam, which I was an end user. So I still kind of feel like I work at, Facebook, or I don't know what that would feel like, but it kind of feels that way sometimes, just because it's such a well-loved product. I loved it, so it's pretty surreal to be able to work doing that. So that's a little bit about my background, and feel free to ask any questions so I can fill in.
So because I'll forget about it, before I forget, we're going to start where you are now, and which is Bluebeam. And my first question is, are they ever going to bring back Mac support?
These are some hard-hitting questions. Great question. I would say we actually somewhat answer that question on a YouTube series that Bluebeam recently launched, called Future Builds. I'm actually a co-host of the series, so shameless plug from one podcast to another. But they did do like a little segment answering that exact question. So maybe that's a plug for Future Builds.
Okay, plug for go check out Future Build for all your Bluebeam podcasts
on YouTube.
On YouTube,
yes. On YouTube.
But it wasn't a yes.
It wasn't a yes. It wasn't a no.
Check this out.
It wasn't a no
either.
It wasn't a yes, wasn't a no. Good pickup there, for sure.
You're really good at teasing this stuff. I like it.
I think our marketing team will be very happy with this.
Because
I would assume so.
My frustration is there's nothing else out there like Bluebeam.
Yeah.
Obviously. And
Bluebeam's really good.
And I would say I made a recent move over to the Mac side of things. It runs everything so much smoother, in my opinion. So anyway, that's enough of that.
I'll make another shameless plug if I can then. You should check out Bluebeam Cloud, where you can upload your documents and use it web or mobile. So might be a good one to check out.
We're
Let me
learning
know
stuff
how it
already,
goes.
Seth.
All right.
Yes.
I didn't know they had a
So-
cloud either.
There you go. So
I
much
was
to
gonna
know.
say, I was gonna change it a little bit. You said you went from New York to Wisconsin, right?
Yes.
My wife's family is from Trumplow, Wisconsin. And I don't know if you know where that is. It's a little bitty town in Wisconsin, about 2 hours north of Madison.
Okay.
And we went there this last summer, and that is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, is up in that area. So that is a really cool state. And I never thought about it. Growing up in Texas and being here my whole life, never thought about, Wisconsin and how pretty it would be. But it is very, very pretty up in that part of the country.
Yeah, you probably went in those 2 weeks in the summertime where everyone is just like, this is the best place on earth. The problem is that there's 52 weeks in the year.
So the other 50 weeks are terrible. So we
Well,
hit
they're
it
just
just
really,
right
really
then.
cold.
I mean, it
Um,
was like in the 70s, 75 degrees, I think. So it was the
yeah.
perfect time, I guess.
Madison is I went to school in Madison
But
in Wisconsin. I mean,
think I'm
it is a
from-
beautiful, beautiful state, but yes, there's definitely some chilliness in the air.
Well, that's good.
So, Stephanie, kind of take us through like your process of like how you got to where you are. It's very interesting jumps that you made.
Yes. I'll say that I never really have had a plan. That maybe sounds terrible to say. But I've always really despised that question of like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because
It's
if
very
you
hard to
told
say.
me, yeah, like
Knows.
I never really knew. I think I've always really led with, I'm a very curious person and I'm a
Mhm.
very ambitious person. And so I've kind of been able to follow those two as almost my compass, my true north,
Mhm.
to kind of figure out what the next thing is. But yeah, I remember those moments at the end of kind of each of those segments and thinking all these different feelings of like, why am I the only one that's, we were a whole graduating class of civil engineers. Everyone went to go work. There was only a handful of us that even continued to study or were like, I don't really know what I want to do. Everyone else seemed to have like this plan. And I remember thinking like, why don't I have a plan? Why is this not enough for me? Why did you just spend all this time on a really difficult degree just to end up being like, whoa, let's try something different. So, and I think those same feelings that I had at the end of my undergrad was really the same feelings I had at the end of being a PM, at the end of like being in BD&C. So I think it's been really, really interesting to get to that point and then kind of reassess what's important to me again, because every single time you're at a different life stage and then you have to make different decisions, maybe for yourself and maybe thinking about your family and kind of growth of life. So I think that's kind of been more of a guiding principle in terms of like how to leapfrog maybe from one opportunity to the next.
Okay. So, we're about culture here, and like for you, like what was your experience, on the engineering side, and then your experience with the folks on the general contracting side, and then obviously what's it like now in the tech side of things?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's such an important one, like I said at the beginning, that you guys are having. I think it's interesting because I actually heard another interview earlier this week where totally different industry. The person was really a woman of $1 billion company. She was really raised without really understanding what it meant to be a woman. She had a brother and it was always the same, and she didn't really feel a difference until she said she started work and she was the only woman on the floor and she was just surrounded by men, and suddenly she realized that her ideas weren't as valued as other people, and she realized that it was just a different conversation being had around her. They sent all the men to play golf, and then they set her up with like a spa appointment, for example, and all these different nuances. And I think it's made me really rethink my own experiences, because I have two brothers. I wasn't really raised in any, this is only for girls or this is only for boys. And my siblings and I were all engineers, so we all got that going for us. But I really wanted to work in construction. I had a bunch of internships throughout my college degrees that gave me the opportunity to be out in the field. I was fortunate enough to have the experiences that didn't necessarily feel like I was put to the side, or at least I didn't feel it until I think it was my last internship, where I was basically told that I was hired only because I was a woman, and they had never had a woman in that department before even apply. And I think that shifted things in me quite a bit. I think being told that with like not too much hesitation, just like, oh, we never had a woman. Welcome. Yeah, and it wasn't really a welcome. It was more like, this is our explanation for why you can't do certain things because you're not strong enough to lift something, and it was like, well, you don't even know, because I'm not even getting the opportunity to try.
Right.
And I think that's really been what has always bothered me. It was like, at least give me the opportunity to try. And then I can decide, no, I don't like this. Or we can decide together, we can have a conversation about it. I think that experience has really led me to really understand what advocating for myself and what having those difficult conversations could look like, should look like, or at least what I want them to look like. Because walking away from that particular instance, I was really upset, obviously, but I didn't really say anything, at least to my superior, to give myself a shot. And going back, I would love, if that happened to me now, it would be a different situation, of course. But I think that's why just having these conversations is just so important. So people do understand that as these things come up, you do have the power to at least say something, because otherwise, what are you left with?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that, I feel like we've had that conversation about 100 times about, speaking up for yourself, and, but man, I can't tell you like how many like kick-ass female electricians I have had on my jobs that just outwork like so many freaking dudes. Like, oh God, it's ridiculous. Like they, I remember I'm from like small town, East Texas. I mean, like if you understand the term podunk is, I'm sure you've heard it at least
I've
once.
heard it. Yes.
So like that's where I'm from, and like growing up there and going into Owen GC side there as well, but like you don't see any women in anything but administrative roles, and then come up to Dallas, and like I'm going to be honest, whenever I first came up here and like I met a female out in the field, I was like, what is this? And then like I was so judgmental coming up to Dallas and just being in a completely different environment that I wasn't used to, and humbled myself really freaking quick. Like I just, at this point now in my career, I just don't understand where people, that were acting like how I was acting whenever I first got up here. Like, I don't understand where that thought process is. Like everybody like gets a chance. I mean, and then if, the performance isn't there, it's performance. It's not gender, race, anything, any of those sorts.
It's how you can do the work. It's It's going back to a lot of the other stuff we had talked about before. It's when you assume somebody is going to be a certain way in a job site just by the way they look, and then it's judging a book by its cover, and that's something that our industry needs to get out of.
Oh,
Needs to get out of that judging and just assuming somebody's going to act or do something or can't do something just because of the way they look anymore. I mean, like you said, Stephanie, people would think that you couldn't lift something just because you're a girl. Well, I mean, who says that you can't?
Yeah.
And that's
We'll
what,
never know.
you never know until say, hey, go
Yeah.
do it, or, show me that you can do it, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But, you can't assume or judge anymore.
Absolutely. And I think in certain instances, I mean, I'm thinking specifically of that internship was such a great example. We were lifting pretty heavy things. And while, yeah, there are certainly like limitations, maybe there's some men that wouldn't be able to have lifted some of the things that they were requiring. But I think there's also a balance of like, yes, it's part of the job, but also we can make accommodations. Like we can have two people lifting this, and that way it'll be easier on everyone's back. And I think it's about having those open lines of communication. I ended up leaving construction and kind of making the transition over to construction tech because I had a baby. And that was a huge thing because I was flying drones at the time and I was gaining weight because, again, I was pregnant. And I remember having to explain that to my superiors, like, I am struggling right now at 7 months pregnant to bend down, and it's really hot and I'm by myself and I don't really feel comfortable doing this anymore, and I'd like to start training somebody else. And I always kind of think back to that story of, yes, I said what I said and I'm happy about it, but I think that there's a piece of the conversation that's missing there, which is someone should have sat me down the day I told them that I was pregnant and said, okay, let's talk about the things you can and can't do. And let's revisit that every so often because you are gaining weight. Like these are just like normal aspects of like what's going on. And I understand that that's inconvenient. It was not convenient for me either, but it's kind of the situation. And I think sometimes there's so much the burden really sits, I think, on the individual to speak up. But I think that's also kind of unfair. And I think a lot of that burden also needs to sit on the companies and managers and empower them to have those conversations. And it doesn't need to be intrusive or like too much, but just at least having a point of reference or being able to sit down and just say, hey, let's check in. Let's hear what we can do to make things easier for you, or how can we support you? That's sometimes all that needs to get said. And it shifts so much of the culture when you start having those open lines of communication.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just like, yeah, the physical aspect of what's happening to you. Now you're not only having to take care of yourself, you're taking care of you plus one. Like, what can we do to help you make sure that you do feel comfortable and that you're not outside of your comfort, so that you feel like you might be, hurting yourself or the baby.
Yeah. It's such an important, and like I said, it's definitely it's a difficult conversation. But one thing that I do really believe strongly is I really don't like when the framing of construction has a labor shortage, because I actually disagree with it to a certain extent. Don't come at me, everybody. But I really think it's more of it's a retention problem is really what it is. Because there's so many people, even as I've started to post content on LinkedIn on my own experiences, of course, some that I'll share, some that I'll always just keep to myself. But so many people that have sent some really kind DMs saying like, I feel the exact same way, or, this has never happened to me, but people have told me they're getting yelled at multiple times a day or a week. and I don't know what to do. And can you, like, what do you recommend? And those are heartbreaking. Like, how on one side of the coin are we saying that there's a labor shortage, but then on the other side of the coin, there's people yelling at their teams? That's just so confusing and upsetting. And yeah, I hope that through conversations like this, that shift starts to happen, because yeah, it is ultimately a retention problem for that exact reason.
I think
and that's
the hardest
called
part.
I was going to say that's
go ahead,
called
Thomas.
like old school construction versus new school construction. The old school construction, when 15, 20 years ago, and still happens these days in some markets, are like you're talking about. It's just constant yelling. It's hey, I need you to do this now. I need you to do this yesterday. I need you to get this done last week. But the kind of the new way of doing stuff is really just figuring out how to motivate somebody to get it done and do it a better way. And you can do that different ways. And yelling and screaming at people like you're talking about and being mean and doing all stuff like that is not the way this new generation that's coming up, how they are motivated. When that happens, they automatically shut down. They don't want to talk anymore. They don't want to do anything. And like you're saying, they get out of the industry and they go do something else. And so I'm kind of in agreement with you on that, that there's not a shortage. It's kind of a retention thing. But it's just that shift in these conversations that we're having, or more and more people start seeing them and seeing the new way of doing it. It might start changing a little bit more, and maybe people will stay a little bit longer and stay in construction.
And the biggest task on mine and Thomas's part is finding a way to get that outreach, to those people that need to hear it.
Yeah.
And then hopefully by some chance they actually listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think this problem definitely comes at it from different directions. Like, there's obviously the employees that are kind of maybe in the trenches. There's the managers, but then there's also management of all these companies where they're really the ones that need to push changes. But it really comes from all different directions. I think the important message that I hope people get from my story or my posts is you can choose to walk away from a role in the industry, but you can also find a role that's adjacent and maybe aligns a little bit closer to your values, so that you still stay in the industry and you still are able to leverage all the experiences that you've had, but just redirect them in a way that feels better or more in alignment with what you're currently looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Whenever I first, we first connected on LinkedIn and started talking on there, I was just, it was very, very interesting. Your story of where you started and where you got to. And I was like, gotta have Stefanie on an episode. Gotta have her on an episode.
Well, I appreciate
he's been
that.
talking about you for a while.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's honestly been surreal. Like I said, I've personally struggled with so many different feelings of not knowing why I wanted to make these shifts and how to go about it, and why does everyone seem so happy and I'm not, and what am I doing with my life? I should have it figured out by now. I think being able to share some of that back and seeing the response back has been so healing to me in a sense, and I hope helpful to others as well, just because I to your point, Seth, I think you said it, like, I don't know where I should have been looking when I was feeling all those things, but I certainly wasn't looking at LinkedIn for that type of content. So yeah, maybe we all need to diversify our social media. But yeah, it's certainly been, it's really been just a blessing in that regard, to just be able to connect with people from all over the country, and hearing both of your experiences. And I think it certainly gives me a lot of hope for the industry moving forward, because there are people like you both, like so many other really cool, interesting people that do share content on LinkedIn. That it's exciting to see what the future of the industry will be.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited that we're in it and trying our darndest to make a difference in it. But
Yeah.
whew,
It's all we can do,
just-
right?
Hey, we didn't say the tagline, Seth.
yeah, we're trying.
Go
We're
ahead.
trying to kill construction with kindness here,
All right, I like it.
So,
yeah, I think that's a great tagline. I think I don't think I have really leaned into culture as much as I've really had to stepping into my current role with Bluebeam. It really is all about kindness, especially with my current role. I interface with a lot of different accounts, talk with a lot of different types of people. And that there's a quote of people don't remember what you say, but how you made them feel. Hopefully I didn't mess that up, but you get the gist.
Yep.
That has rung so true for me. And I think each of us have something that we know works for us. I think for me, it's been transparency and humor. And I thought for years I was too honest. And for years I thought that there was no space for humor in the corporate world. And I think leaning into both of those things and just saying like, hey, like this is me. Like it might not work for everyone, but some people like it and it makes me feel good. I think those just leaning into that has been such a freeing experience. And I think in a sense, maybe my previous roles didn't really give me the space to explore that. Or maybe it's just because I'm a mom. I'm just like, whatever. This is me now.
No one wants to wake up and put on a mask every day. You should be able to go into work and be who you are and interact with those around you, freely.
Yeah.
Obviously there's limitations to that.
Respectfully.
Yeah, respectfully.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where maybe this has changed, obviously. It's been a couple years since I graduated, but I feel like there's certainly the stigma of like men should wear suits and women wear pantsuits or something like, this like very buttoned up, very corporate America vibe. And I think that that's maybe one of the things that drew me into construction was it didn't really leave room for that. Like nobody was wearing suits and it wasn't like, so as polished as this idea that I think I envisioned my life would be. But yeah, I think it's a balance of everything, of course.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I get to wear jeans and boots every day of my life.
I'm just waiting on our safety director to let us wear shorts. And then it'll be good.
It'll never happen.
It'll never happen, but it gets hot in the summertime in Texas.
How hot does it get out for you guys?
I can get into the.
Well, you're in Vegas, so
you're in Vegas.
So it'll get into the hundreds.
It's the dry heat, though.
It's the humidity.
No, I was in Phoenix for a year on a project, and that 118 was freaking brutal. It was brutal.
It sounds awful.
Like I was, everyone would be like, "Yeah, but it's dry heat." And I was like, "No." Like the sun is just like beating down on you. It sucks.
It's like a whole new level. I mean, I worked in Wisconsin and in New York during the summer times, and it was warm and hot and uncomfortable a couple days, sticky a couple days. But Vegas is a different. I've never been to Texas in the summer, like construction. I have not done that. That sounds maybe even worse with the humidity, but the heat is next level.
Yeah. So little cut up session here, nearing the end of our time. So here at the end of the month, I'm going to be going to Philly, but one of those days I'm going to be in New York. If I had to go eat somewhere, like, where am I going? Like, I'm going to spring this on you.
Oh gosh, it's been a long time. Honestly, whenever I go back to New York, I don't think they're $1 anymore, but I usually go for dollar pizza
Okay.
just because it's nostalgic for me.
Okay.
I think it's like $1.25 now.
Inflation.
Inflation.
Oh.
Thanks, Donald Trump.
um, but I usually try. Yeah, I don't. I think because I was like a college student really when I lived in the city, but there's a bunch of like really good dessert places.
Oh, I'm a dessert guy.
And can you go wrong with a bagel? No.
Oh, no, I already know the bagel place that I'm going to. The last time I went, I know where it's at. It's memorized. It's burned into my brain. I'm making a beeline straight for this deli to get my bagel.
Yeah, I can't really say I have like a specific. I'm not like a very picky person either, though. I feel like I have like just a lot of nostalgia. Ooh, actually, okay, this is very random, but there is a waffle cart. It's in Bryant Park, usually.
Okay.
And it's called Waffles and Dinges. It's
Dingus?
Dutch. Yeah. It means stuff in Dutch.
Okay. I mean,
but it's just.
I've been called a dingus before.
I didn't know what that meant.
It's spelled differently. I think dingus, what you're saying is a U at the end, and this is an E at the end.
Okay.
Dinges, I guess, if we were like to pronounce it like Americans. But yeah, this is like very backstory, but I was born in Belgium, and the big thing there are waffles. And that place is probably as authentic a waffle as you can get that I've had. So yeah, it's like in a little cart, but I think they have a couple of them around. You might have to look up online, like their locations if they're moving or whatever. But yeah, that's another like little nostalgic place for me if I can make it there.
Nice. And then, of course, if you ever make it to the DFW area, reach out to either myself or Thomas, and we can give you
not in the summer though.
Not in the summer.
No, come in the summer, experience it.
I would say spring or fall.
Yes,
that's
I would
fair.
say that this time of year or September, October is probably the best.
See, this time of year, we're like hitting the
thunderstorms, tornadoes, hailstorms.
Like it's the one day like today it's in the 50s, and then like
where you're at, it's in the 50s.
The next day it could be in the 80s.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happens here too. I was actually in Austin 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my first time in Austin, so it was interesting.
So many good places to eat down there too.
Yes, well, I don't even think we got any food outside of our event. We had like a work event, but Bluebeam actually has an office in DFW, or in Dallas. So I was there a year and a half ago, maybe.
Okay.
So great airport.
Great airport.
Phenomenal.
They
a delightful
still getting
experience.
added on and renovated.
I was about to say they're kind of the leader on a lot of stuff for construction too out there at the airport. Mm-hmm. They got a lot of cool stories. I got a buddy who's a civil engineer out at the airport, and he tells me stories all the time of how they're building it, and it's just way futuristic out there. So
that's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
I just love the convenience. I was like, this is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yep.
But no, Texas is definitely an interesting. Yeah, it was my first only 2 times I've really been, and it's weird when you're there for work, you don't really get to experience so much, but Austin was beautiful. I didn't expect a river in the middle of the city like that, and beautiful.
Lake Travis over there, and Austin is very, very beautiful. Lots of good little hiking trails to go do, if you're into that kind of thing, and there's a lot to do. Music, live music on every corner. It is our most artistic city, I would say.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But Stefanie, anything else you want to put out there, like where people can find you, like obviously LinkedIn.
Yeah, I can make a couple shameless plugs. There is my LinkedIn, Stefanie Reichman, and would love for people to DM me or let me know what you thought of the episode. And then if anyone is thinking of exploring roles within construction tech, I'm actually also a co-founder of aectechjobs.com, which is a job board that's really all for construction tech jobs. So a really exciting project that kind of helps people that are maybe considering making a transition like this and just don't even know which companies to start with. Of course, everyone knows like the 3-4 really big companies, but there's a ton of smaller companies that are doing some really, really cool things. So it's awesome to kind of be able to partner with those companies and put all those jobs together in one place.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So we end this on a really weird fashion. Just look at the camera and we'll do the rest. But we'll
Okay.
literally, it's a teaser with no information on what's happening. So
Perfect.
that being said, on the next episode of Build the Culture.